For the past few weeks, I've been talking about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I've been discussing why it has helped me out. And one thing that I can tell you that I've really picked up on since I've started doing these speakdoms last year was I've picked up on the fact that a lot of people who comment on these and who comment on Facebook and other places that I'm at, a lot of them have depression and anxiety. Depression and anxiety is a very common thing. In fact, I believe I read somewhere that 1 out of every 3 people have a form of depression or anxiety. And like I've said before, there's different versions of it. You've got, obviously, depression that's clinical, like chemical, and then you've got situational depression. But CBT can help you with either one. It's just that one might take longer than the other to really reform. And what I want to talk about here is kind of use some real life examples of some of the ways that maybe you guys have been feeling and kind of help you at least get the road going to kind of improve and to really help you, not so much get rid of your anxiety entirely, because that could take a while. That could take a few months, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few years. It just depends on the person. But to at least get the ball rolling. So here's kind of one thing you have to understand, right? You have to really follow me on this one, okay? The scientific theory behind this is entirely based on how our emotions and our brain kind of works together. So I'm going to simplify it like this. What you think and what you do, your actions, your thoughts and your actions can influence how you feel. Your thoughts, your actions, and your reactions to certain situations in life, whether they be good or bad, can influence how you feel. And what could end up happening is your emotions end up getting so impacted by this that not only do you actually go through a depressive episode or you go through some anxiety or whatever, but you also may affect the future. You may end up affecting yourself and kind of doing harm to yourself that you would not normally do. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say you go through a breakup, right? You're with somebody, you have a breakup, and the breakup happens, and then you start thinking to yourself, well, I lost this person. I'm never going to find somebody better or as good. Nobody will ever love me again. And you start kind of feeling sorry for yourself, and you're going into this sort of hole where you are just beating yourself up over this. You're literally like just totally just in a depressive state where you're just completely like despising your situation, which has happened to pretty much everybody because we all have hardships happen to us, right? What could happen and what often ends up happening is we end up being afraid. We create this sort of anxiety where we don't want to go out there and meet new people. We don't want to go out there and try to seize life. Now, obviously, when you go through a breakup, there has to be a bit of a time where you sort of reflect and it's like the rebound period. You don't want to jump into another relationship right away, right? You want to kind of, take it easy and kind of reflect on yourself and improve yourself, right? And kind of figure out what went wrong. But what ends up happening is that over time, if you beat yourself up so much and you're so negative on yourself, you'll end up creating this self-fulfilling prophecy where you won't go out and meet new people. You'll be afraid to talk to people, and you'll start creating these sort of blockades around yourself. You'll create a blockade around yourself like Fortnite. I'm not even kidding. Where you'll see a girl that you're attracted to and you're like, oh, I want to go talk to her, but oh, maybe she has a boyfriend. Well, she wouldn't like me. Oh, I'm too ugly. I'm too tall. I'm too fat. I'm too short. I'm too poor. And you'll create these sort of false situations about yourself or false ideology, really, there's a scientific word for it, and I'm having trouble remembering what that word is because I'm not a professional therapist. It's like a self-image. You create a false self-image of yourself, and then that ends up actually triggering more anxiety and depression. So it's almost like an endless loop, right? And that's how it works. And the key is you have to break that loop. So when you're stuck in this loop, you're feeling very lonely and you isolate yourself, and then that's going to cause more depression. It's not going to really make you feel better. You'll be feeling more down about yourself and feeling like you're less than worthy of being loved, which you're not. And so with cognitive behavioral therapy, what it does is it helps you sort of change your entire reaction, your entire viewpoint in your brain. You are literally well, not literally, figuratively rewiring your brain to take information in and process it differently than you did in the past. Now, understand, this will take some time. You're not going to be able to cure all of your anxiety in 24 hours. This could take weeks, it could take months, like I said before. And what's going to end up happening is, even if you think you're cured, there's going to come a point in your life where something will actually trigger you. You know, people say, "Oh, triggered online." No, something will actually trigger your insecurities, and you'll have a flare up, right? And you'll kind of go back to your old self, and then maybe you'll think about it and say, "Well, I didn't mean to do that," and then kind of, you know. So it's not like it's something that's necessarily something that totally goes away, even though it can, right? And with cognitive behavioral therapy, instead of saying, you know, no one will ever love me again, I'm not worthy of being loved, I don't want to go out, you rewire that thought process to where you kind of say, you know, I'm sad about this relationship that didn't work out. You sit in your pain, you sit in your grieving, you properly grieve the breakup, you properly grieve your sadness, your emotions, you cry, you really do what you need to do to eventually get over it. But your viewpoint changes, right? Your outlook changes. So instead, you say stuff like, "Oh, well, I'm sad that this didn't work out, but at some point in my life, I know I'll find somebody who will love me, and I know we'll try again. And this time, I won't make the same mistake that I made to lose this person," right? That's the right way to look at it. Now, obviously, if you're deeply in love, you don't have to tell me, brother. I know it ain't going to happen overnight. That's something you have to process. But it's still, with CBT, it's still something to where you're not allowing the depression and the anxiety to get to you. So it's one thing if you grieve a loss, but it's something else if you grieve a loss unhealthily with depression and anxiety on top of it, because it does make it worse. You know, it's one thing to beat yourself up. It's another thing to just acknowledge that you have something bad happen and you kind of move forward from it. And the goal is to do the second, not the first. So as these obstacles come at you in your life, right? As these obstacles start hitting you, you know, you're not necessarily just trauma, but like something bad happening to you. It could be a flat tire, whatever. What you can do at that point is, as time goes by, you learn to use those things I talked about before, mindfulness, talking to yourself, to kind of, in a way, feel better. And instead of having anxiety, you end up sort of feeling a certain type of way about it, but eventually it just kind of gets brushed over to the side. You know what I mean? You literally can actually cure yourself. Maybe not 100%. Maybe you can do 100%. It depends on how much time you're willing to invest in it, but it's magical because it's real. It's worked for me. And you end up having, as a result, less anxiety because you kind of learn to accept the way things are, but at the same time, and you grieve properly, but at the same time, you don't let it just eat you alive and turn you into this depressed person. You know what I mean? You don't let it affect you to that degree, or at least you try not to let it affect you to that degree. And sometimes you're still going to feel stressed and concerned and worried about things, but with proper usage of mindfulness and CBT, you can improve these things to where you at least know how to deal with it and you feel better. And it really is a magical tool. I mean, it's not really magic, but it feels like magic to me. You know what I mean? Because I've never tried it before until now. And I want to encourage people out there, if you have anxiety and depression and things like that, you know, try to read some books. You know, even go to your library, which is free, I think. Libraries should be still free, right? I haven't been to a library in years. I usually buy my stuff on Amazon. But if not, it's okay. And just see if you can find a good book on CBT or a good book on mindfulness or ACT, which is something totally different. I'll do a different video on it. And that really does help, because if you can't afford going to counseling, at the very least you have a book that can probably help you through it. But you really have to focus on the book and pay attention to it and really see what they're trying to tell you, you know, or at least this video is trying to help you out. So this does take time. Trust me, it takes time, but it's real. And when I say it takes time, I don't mean you read the book and it just magically slowly gets better. No, it takes time and practice. It takes time and you practicing what you've learned and practicing your ability to be mindful and not let your body go into fight or flight mode, which is basically when your defense mechanism goes up, and to sort of react to things in a positive way. That's what cognitive behavioral therapy does. It doesn't necessarily hurt. It doesn't necessarily cure you of your trauma, right? If you want to be cured of your trauma, if you've ever been like molested or something serious like that, you may need something called deep therapy, which is way more time and way more expensive and with an actual therapist. CBT can take you a long way, but it might not be able to cure everything. Just be honest with you. But if you don't have a problem like that, which God bless. I mean, if you had something like that happen to you, like you're in my prayers and my well wishes, because you don't deserve that. You don't deserve that kind of trauma. But we all go through some kind of trauma. But something serious like that, where you might need deep therapy. I mean, CBT is a good way to start. Deep therapy is something like that you want to try if CBT doesn't work in turn. But CBT will work to a degree. I mean, it's going to work if you apply it right. I'm very confident in it. But if there's a problem, you can. The whole key to CBT is you behave differently. You don't overreact. You don't have a meltdown. You don't, sit there and feel sorry for yourself. Instead, you process the emotion. You rewire your brain on how it gets processed, and then you just move on with your life. It's a beautiful thing. Just imagine those of you out there who have anxiety and depression. If something like this, if you could do this, and you can do it, I believe in you because I was all jacked up and I feel better. Trust me on this one. I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't try it myself. So it really does help improve, the way you react, the way you treat other people as well. You tend to see things from a different perspective when you use mindfulness. If somebody's rude to you, instead of being rude back to them, you might say, well, you know what? Maybe they're having a bad day. And maybe if you're kind, maybe they'll come back and say, thank you so much. I was having a terrible day and your kindness made me feel better. There's a lot of situations where that does happen. Maybe something terrible happens to that person and they're taking it out on you. Now, again, does that make it right? Of course not. But you have control over your actions. You can't control their actions, right? So what you can do is, instead of, you don't have to take anybody's abuse, dude. Let me tell you right now, don't take anybody's abuse. But instead of abusing them back, you can kind of be mindful and say, well, you know what? Maybe they're going through something. Let me be there for them, and then kind of talk them through it. And you'd be surprised. Like when you learn this mindfulness stuff, you kind of become your own therapist in a way. So I'm telling you, like my therapist told me something, I'm telling you something, then if you apply it and if you make it work, you're going to tell other people stuff. And that's really what makes the world great, is that we're able to share ideas and thoughts with those who we trust and help each other through these problems that we all face by spreading our knowledge and spreading our understanding, and that's why I do believe in this. So like I've said before, it's a very powerful tool. It's very real, and it's changed my life. And I'm going to screw up. I'm going to overreact. I'm going to have meltdowns at some point in my life. It might not happen for another year. It might not happen for another 10 years. It might not happen for another 6 months. Or maybe even 2 weeks. Who knows? But at least this time, I'll be able to know what the problem is and rectify it quickly and fix it quickly. You know what I mean? And that's the best you can do, because as people, we're always trying to better ourselves, or at least most of us are, who are adults, trying to better ourselves and better ourselves, not just for us, but for those around us, because really without the people who we love around us, we're nothing. So I really hope that helped you. Genuinely do. Thank you for watching. Remember, I care about you. And have a great day. Thank you.